Could record. All right. So this call is going to be recorded. I'm going to jump in and get into some very personal things. I think that affect everybody in life. Some good, some bad, some ugly stuff. So I really want this to be a great conversation going back and forth. But it is recorded, and I'll put pieces of it here and there. I may even just post the whole thing depending on the content on one of my YouTube channels. So I'd love for you to be open and really share your heart if it comes to it. But understand too that although I want this to be very, I don't know, intimate, call it that, authentic, it will be shared at some point somewhere. So if there's something you really don't want anybody else to know, don't, don't speak it out. As Rebecca, as you know, at our conferences, we get very, very, deep and authentic, and we just share our hearts and vulnerable in the whole thing. So at our events, everybody knows that. I usually give some kind of a prep and let people know that everything's being recorded. So I thought I'd do the same thing here. So recorded and being shared, only speak about what you want the world to know. In that arena, I hope that your hardest times you're able to share because that's what helps people heal, right? That's where the wisdom came from. So going back in these time of the year, I have a couple of different things on my mind. One is always 2025 is coming. What do I want to do? Right. And then it comes back to we can have immediate change anytime we want. It doesn't have to be the beginning of the next year, right? How many people do you know? How many times have you done it? Like I'm gonna sign up for the gym this year. And I'm gonna go. Every I'm a gym guy, so every time the beginning of the year comes, I used to complain. Like if somebody wants to join the gym and work out as much as they can and try and get on track, great. But I used to complain because the gyms would get packed. Like starting about now, actually, because people go, oh, I'm not going to wait till January. I'm going to start now. Gyms will get packed for about 3 months and then they're back to normal again, right? And we used to be like, oh my God, all these people, they're going to come and they're going to go. They're wasting time and taking up all the machines. So that I know thinking like that is more of a negative state. So that's why I said I used to get mad. Now I go, hey, good for you. I hope you stay. I hope you stay for the whole year, get in shape, work out. We can become friends and get your body, your mind, and your mental health in place where you want it to be. But so I always look at what's coming for 2025, and I'm always looking at what's new. I look at my year and I go, okay, what did I do? What went well? What do I want to do better? What do I want to shift? How can I help more people? Right. So I'm always shifting and growing in life and in business. But what I find for myself is I'm in a pattern. I find myself in a pattern. I think people don't realize the patterns, the loops, or the paradigms that we find ourselves in and that we don't even know it. Anybody Bob Proctor fan? I learned from Bob Proctor many, many years ago. He made he's many great things, but he said, the challenge with the paradigm is that we don't know that we're in one, right? And when I do paradigm, I always do this because I feel like I'm in this loop, I'm in this circle, I'm inside the paradigm, right? And when we're inside this paradigm and we're just living and we're not really paying attention to what's happening around us or our daily thoughts, actions, and everything else, then we are in this paradigm. And it may even be like we think everything's good and it might be good. But even if things are good and we're in this paradigm, we're not breaking into or out into what else can go well for us in our life. What changes can we make? What patterns are we in? The pattern that I've found that I've gotten into over my life, and I've just discovered some of this in the last 2.5, 3 years. And I think I've been discovering so much because about 3 years ago, I separated from my wife after 32 years. And I was used to it being in a relationship and being married and having my household and having my kids and my grandkids and the whole thing for that entire life, raising my kids and everything that comes with it. If we all have families, well, most of us do. So when that marriage came to an end, I went out, got my own place, and kind of was going out and doing things that I usually would never do. And when I say that, I just mean like I'll go out every once in a while and have a drink, but I was going out. It was like a new thing for me. So I was going out. I was going out to, San Diego and the gas lamp and clubs and bars and all these types of things. Really things that I hadn't done since I was in my teens, honestly, because if for those of you who do know my story, I believe you do, Rebecca. Caesar, I don't know if you've watched my story, if you've seen a little bit about me, but in my very young life, I partied and I was wild and I was crazy and I used to get incarcerated all the time and did a lot of dumb things. overcame those things and kind of moved on with my life. So some of the things that I was doing when I first got separated from my wife after 32 years was it's like I went back to the old me, and not completely because the old me was really lost, broken, violent, and just a pretty wild person, not a good person. But what I say I went back to was drinking and partying like a lot versus just once in a while with friends or family or something like that. And I found myself questioning, why am I doing this? Like, why am I, waking up hungover, and why, I'd wake up. I'm actually in a hotel right now because I'm traveling, but oh, let me let somebody else in here. But I would find myself waking up in the downtown and the gas lamp and stuff, hungover with alcohol and stuff all around me. And I would kind of look around, I'd wake up and I'd be like, what is happening? Like, where is this coming from? Why can't I control it? And what I've learned as actually recognizing and the ability to be self-aware and analyzing is looking at my surroundings, looking at my actions and going, why is this happening? Like, why am I allowing this to happen? How am I putting myself back in these weird positions? Because nobody likes to wake up hungover. And I hadn't been waking up hungover in almost 32 years. Every once in a while, like I was saying during my marriage, I would have these challenges, our parties or whatever. So what I've looked at and what I started to realize is that old patterns. How do I put this? So I'll give you an example with my days of being incarcerated that I learned. When somebody at a very young age gets incarcerated and they do even just a few years, right? 2, 3, 4 years, 10 years, whatever it is. And when they get out, they go back to the exact same person that they were before they went in. Because it's like, and if you haven't experienced this, it's understandable. But what it's like is when you go incarcerated, your life that you had stops and you go into incarceration type of life, right? The daily grind and everything else that goes on in there. So when you get out, you don't know anything else except for who you were. So you go exactly back to the person you were, right? And that's why you see there's a lot of things that you see on TV and all this type of stuff where somebody will be locked up for 15 years and they'll get out and they'll go try and find their ex-girlfriend. And they're like, well, I'm married, I have kids. Like, what are you doing knocking on my door? Like it's just like their life for the last 10, 15 years has gone on, and who they were 15 years ago is gone. But this person who gets out, all they know is what used to happen. So I say that example, so I think it might be easier to understand than after 32 years of marriage and then getting separated, I didn't really know what to do. So I basically went back to the person that I was, which was a partying person, right? So I went back and I had some good friends in San Diego and the gas lamp. I don't know if you guys know the gas lamp in San Diego, but before that, I really didn't know too much about it. But it's a 10 block, I don't know, huge block, maybe 5 huge blocks of just nightclubs and bars. And, people go there for the summer, people are there in the winter. There's conferences there all the time. There's a lot going on. So I started hanging out there. Going back, so one of the things I realized was, okay, I've gone back to some of who I was after these 32 years of marriage. I started paying attention to it. So who was I before my marriage? Who was I before I got into that relationship? And the outside of the criminal stuff that I used to do, who was I? I was looking at it, and what it was is I was lost. Okay, I was lost. I lived in the fog, and I was used to living in chaos. This is a realization that I had. I'm 54 years old, by the way. And this was a realization that I've just had over the last 3 years. I was used to living in chaos, right? So think about this. In short, many of you know I had a childhood trauma at the age of 7. At the age of 9, I started doing drugs. At 13, I conceived and had my first child. And then at 14, I got incarcerated. I spent the majority of the next 10 years in some form of a facility getting out of San Quentin prison when I was 24 years old. Okay. So between the age of 7 and 24, and I was honestly a few years even after I got out, I was used to living in chaos, right? If you're incarcerated, you're always watching your back. There's always something going on, whether it's going on with you or somebody else, there's always something going on, right? You can hear people getting killed and raped and everything else and San Quentin is 5 tiers. So you can hear everything, right? 2 bars, you've probably seen movies and things. I mean, not 2 bars, but bars and bunks and the whole thing. But you can hear everything that's going on around you. You can see people getting killed on the yard. There was somebody standing this close to me, a friend of mine standing this close to me. Somebody came up behind him and slit his throat. And that whole lifestyle, I looked over and I saw what happened and I had to walk away. That's the culture, that's the lifestyle, right? It doesn't matter how close they are to you, you walk away, right? You're not a snitch, you don't know what happened, I didn't see nothing, I don't want to see nothing, you just walk away. So looking at all of these things And then being diagnosed later in my years with PTSD after getting out and all that type of stuff and all these, mental health things, I didn't even realize that PTSD was could be outside of the military. I thought PTSD was a military thing, right? And then I got diagnosed with it one time from my psychologist. And I go, PTSD, I was never in the military. She goes, so what? She saw you lived a life of 10 years of wild craziness. And I said, yeah, that's true. So I kind of understood that. So for all of those years, I was used to something always being wrong around me and always being aware and watching my back. I had to. That's the lifestyle. People don't realize it, right? Even the people who are in it, I didn't realize it for most of the time. It was just the way I lived. So after these 32 years of marriage, after finding myself hung over in hotels and all this kind of stuff, I started analyzing it like I was saying, and I was going, what's happening? And I realized that I was looking psychologically, subconsciously, looking for chaos. Even if things were okay in my life, everything's okay. The day's good. I'm sitting here right now. I'm talking to some cool people. I got to, after this call, I'm going to go on and do my things. Everything's fine. But psychologically and subconsciously, I would be looking for something wrong. So I would create things, whether they were real or not. I would create things and I'd have this problem. Oh my God, this didn't happen right, or that didn't happen right. Or, I started dating after I got separated, and I would look for things to be wrong in the relationship, right? Something has to be wrong, but I couldn't figure out why. Like I didn't realize I was even doing that. But looking back, I realized I'm used to being in chaos. I've lived in chaos for so many years. If there's not something wrong, subconsciously, I'll find it. I'll look for it. And we all know, we've all heard, I believe, seek and you shall find, right? And good or bad. If you're looking for answers to something or why something's not happening or happening, you'll find it. Even if it's not true, you'll find it. Like right now, well, algorithms and Google and AI and social media and all that type of stuff. If you start looking for something anti whoever you are, you will find it. If you start looking for something pro whoever you are, you'll find it. Right. That's why there's such division in people, because people are on an algorithm of what they want to believe, and other people are on an algorithm of what they want to believe. And it's funny or it's weird. They're hearing exactly what they want to. And it's on social media, it's on the media, the regular media, it's everywhere if you look for it. So that's why people are so core in their beliefs. Even if the value is just like, oh my God, that doesn't even make sense. How could you believe that? It's because they've studied it, they've seeked it, they've searched it, and now they believe that. And then they start to battle with the other one. No, 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 I did my research. I figured it out. This guy's saying, no, I did my research. I figured it out. Because anything you're looking for, you'll find, right? I mean, I don't want to, I'm not going to get into it, but some people believe the earth is flat and some don't, right? And the ones who believe the earth is flat, man, they will fight you for it. And the ones who believe it's round, the same thing. And they all show proof. Here's why it's round. Here's why it's flat. And both of them, I've looked at some of it. I looked at them, I go, they both make sense. And I don't know. So it doesn't matter. I'm not going to argue about it because really I don't care. You know what I mean? If the earth is flat, it's flat. If it's round, it's round. I don't know. I don't know how that changes things, right? Anyhow, so I started looking for chaos in my life. I realized I was looking for chaos in life. So I had to kind of calm down and go, okay, how do I not seek chaos? So that was a big breakthrough that I had just in these last couple of years. Psychologically, subconsciously, I look for chaos when everything is okay. The other thing that I learned, I wrote a couple things down, is in order to understand why I do what I do, and I've talked about this for a long time, but I continue to learn why I do what I do, why I act the way that I act, and why I feel the way that I feel, right? It is the beginning of that is self-awareness, understanding that pain we create often, the chaos I create, and that I'm in a pattern of it. Going into these holiday seasons, here's a wider spread one, okay? If you're used to being in the holiday seasons, depressed, alone, saddened, missing people, poor me, that type of thing, and then the holidays are over, and woo, I feel good again, the holidays over, and you're back to your grind of whatever you're doing, and then November comes around, the holidays are starting, and you start to go down again. Man, poor me, and that's what it comes down to, honestly. It victim, right? People don't understand it, and I'm not putting anybody down. I fall into it myself. If you're poor me in any way, that's victim mode, right? And we have to stay out of victim mode. But what happens is there's a psychological, and I'll say this layman terms because it's probably the only way I know how. But uh, psychologically, being conditioned, right? There are hormones that trigger, right? There are happy hormones, there are sad hormones, there are stress hormones. There's all these things that trigger into our body. When your body starts to take over your brain per se, when your body starts to take over your reactions and your actions in life, and you don't understand it, your body will control you. Your body, right? There's mind, there's body, there's spirit. I'll get into the spiritual stuff that I believe later. By the way, I believe in God. I believe in creation. I believe in Jesus. The whole thing. But there is a science to the mind, right? One of my books is called Overcoming Trauma with God and Psychology, right? Because there is a science, the mind, the body, and the spirit. There's a science. So when we're conditioned to be sad every year around the same time, those hormones will trigger without us having a reason for them to trigger. If every year around November you start to get upset, you start to get sad, you start to get down, your body is used to it. It's also a pattern. So right around November, you'll start to feel down and you won't even know why. Like, oh man, I get depressed every year around this time. Oh man, I feel sad. Oh, what am I going to do for Christmas? I'm going to be by myself, all these types of things, right? Even though I was married for 32 years, and the chaos that I would create in my own life and things like that, the holidays were one of them. Even though I was married for 32 years, there were many, many years that I would not go with my family to the holiday celebrations, right? Whether it had to be because I was working or because maybe during those times that I was working, the times that I wasn't, I was in the pattern of not being around during the holidays. I've always battled with the holidays, right? And it's my own thing. That's what it comes down to, right? Self-awareness and understanding. We create our own chaos, we create our own pain. So around November, you could be great the entire year. And then around November, you'll start to drop. You'll start to go down. You'll start to go into depression. It's because your body's used to doing that every year, right? And if your body is used to in that pattern of dropping every year, and you're paying attention and you're able to recognize it, then you can come out of it. I went to therapy for many years between psychologists and therapists and the whole thing. And the key that I learned during these years was recognizing when I fall mentally, when I fall. Because I was talking to one of these psychologists one times, and they were asking me about depression and the things that I fall into. And I said, I feel like, and I went, I had my arms really wide, and I said, I feel like I go in these like for months into depression, and most of the time I don't even realize it. I'm like for months and months, and all of a sudden I'll just kind of go like, man, like these last few months I've done nothing. I'm just depressed. I'm just, in this darkness. And then he said, what happens when you recognize it? I said, well, that's kind of when I come out. He goes, and the key is to recognize it very early on because you know you're going to come out. You know you're going to come out. Every hard time you've ever had, you've come through, right? If you do battle with depression, anxiety, these types of things, you have come through it. You do come out of it. We do come out of it, right? So he said the key is to notice as soon as you fall. And if you could recognize as soon as you fall, you'll come out of it. So I started paying attention to that and going, okay, I gotta realize when I'm going down. And just with that thought of paying attention, self-awareness of falling, I was able to recognize it. And it wouldn't be 3 months, it might be 2 weeks, right? And then a week, right? And then a few days. And what happens is I was able to reverse it, right? I used to go like, man, I've been in these depressions and these anxieties for this long. And then I feel like I would just be happy for about this long, and then I'd fall right back into it. So I was able to reverse that, right? So now I fall for about this long. I do fall, but then I recognize it and I go, okay, I always come out of it. I'm going to come out of it right now. And then so now I'm the longer is the good, the happy, the regular, the normal, whatever you want to call it. And then when I fall, I'm able to see it and jump out of it. So patterns, being in a loop, right? Being in a loop of chaos, being in a loop of old patterns, whether it be in your business, in your career, in your relationship, right? There's a lot of things that we experience, and everybody here, I'm assuming, is over 40, okay? So we've all lived, right? We've all lived, we've all been in relationships, we've all had breakups, we've all had great jobs, we've all had crappy jobs, we've all made money, we've all lost money, we've all experienced life, right? So we're carrying all of these things with us in the subconscious mind and not even understanding that those things we've experienced do control our lives, our reactions and our actions with others, right? If you dated and this goes both ways. I'm not bashing on women in any way. It could be a woman dating a guy with long hair or a guy dating a woman with short hair. Who knows? Whatever it is, right? If you've been in a relationship with somebody and it went really bad, and then you see somebody that looks like that person, you'll fall into a negative state without even knowing why. It could just be a glance. They walked right by you. And subconsciously, your mind, you see them and it reminds you of that person. and then you get into a bad mood. Now, actually, I'll give you an example of that. The one of the therapists that I used to see, I was in this group therapy thing, and one of the therapists I used to see, she was talking about, and I don't know if you guys realize this, but most therapists and psychologists, the reason they go into that field is because they battle so much, and it's very common. And I'm a good example of that, and a lot of coaches that I meet is we battle so much and we're in so much darkness that we start seeking and trying to learn and grow. And we get out there and we take courses and coaching programs and we do all of these things and we do them for ourselves. Honestly, I do most of the things that I've done, all the certificates and all this stuff that I have. I did it for me to figure me out. And then you take that what you take that and your wisdom that you learned from your life experiences, good, bad, and ugly, then you go share it, right? So this therapist was telling me a story and she said, hey, how I recognized that my youth affected me and that old things affect my current relationships. So this girl, she's married, right? She's married, and her husband, and they were a young couple, right? And I forgot the name of it, but I don't know, 10 years ago or so, there was some show that everybody was hooked on. Like all the kids used to go and they'd have slumber parties and stuff, and they'd watch this dance show or something. I forget what it was called. And it was right around that time that I was talking to this therapist, and she said, my husband was watching this high school show. And she said, I walked in and he was watching it, and instantly I was in a bad mood. She said, but I didn't know why. She said, but instantly I was in a bad mood and I went into the room and he said, hey, come out here and watch this with me. And she said, no, I don't want to watch that. And I don't know why. And she started to argue with her husband, right? But being self-aware, she was able to kind of go, why am I in a bad mood? Everything was fine. Everything was good until I got home. Like what happened? Like I was in a great mood, had a great day, whatever. I got home and all of a sudden I'm in this bad mood. So she started to be self-aware and analyze, okay, what situation, what is surrounding me right now? What have I seen? What has passed by me? What is happening? And she realized that her husband was watching this high school musical show, and that when she was in high school, she had a very hard time while she was in high school. And she said this, so I'm not saying this about her. I didn't think she was ugly at all. But she said when she was in high school, she was ugly. She had braces and just, she was the girl who got made fun of, didn't have any boyfriends and that whole thing. She had a really bad, hard time in high school. So carrying that with her, even in her adulthood, when she walked in the house and her husband was watching this high school thing, the high school triggered her and she didn't even know it. She didn't realize, she didn't put together her horrible high school experience to there's a high school show on and everybody's happy in high school that it triggered her and it made her feel down. So she was able to analyze and be aware of it and go, wow, something from that long ago is affecting me today and my relationship because I started arguing with my husband. So there are things in our life that affect us right now, this second, that we don't even realize why. How many times have you been in an argument with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your wife, whatever, your wife, your husband, and you kind of go like, why are we even arguing? Like, where did this come from? Well, I don't know. You just got pissed off all of a sudden. Like, why? What happened? Right? And we don't know sometimes. But if we're able to understand the things that I'm talking about, and I love to share this type of stuff because people don't know. I didn't know these things. I learned a ton over the last 20, 30 years. But there's still new things that I don't realize. And the way that we realize them is that we experience them. And that's one thing that I kind of battled with this wonderful woman that I was seeing is we both had our own baggage, I guess is the easiest thing to say. We both had our own baggage, but when something would happen, we were able to look at each other and go, what just happened? And analyze it. And it just built us up and built us up and built us up because we were both in a mode of wanting to understand the whys in our life, right? And you know how they say people come into your life for a reason? I really believe that this woman and I met each other to help each other ascend per se and understand who we are psychologically, spiritually, and the whole thing because we had so many breakthroughs. The breakthroughs came, honestly, sadly, and I tried to have breakthroughs without it, but the breakthroughs mostly came through some form of pain through her and I arguing or through and I having a breakup and things like that. And then we'd kind of analyze and see what happened, what just happened and why it happened. So I say sadly and I hope there's a better way for humans to to figure things out and have breakthroughs. But it seems like the breakthroughs usually do come through some type of a challenge, right? Some types of pain. And I quote Steve Jobs all the time, where we can't connect the dots looking forward. We can't look forward and go, well, this is going to happen, and then that's going to happen, and then I'm going to figure it out. We have to look back and go, ah, I see. We connecting these dots. This happened, and here's what I learned, and this happened, and here's what I learned, and today I'm a better person for all of these dots that I've just connected. That doesn't mean to go back and dwell on the past in any way. It just means to understand. It's okay to look at the past and go, what happened? How do I figure it out? How do I get better? Right? But to dwell on it is a whole nother thing. All right, so I get passionate about this. You guys can tell that, and I did say I wanted this to be a conversation for those couple of you. Robert, how you doing, my friend? Miriam, thanks for joining us. What I said earlier is that this call is being recorded, right? And a lot of these calls, I'll break them up and I'll put them on to different social media and things like that. So it's a we're being very vulnerable and authentic, but don't share anything that you don't want out there, right? I'd love for you to open your heart and just share things. I mean, when people come to my live events and we get into these types of talks, they open up and they share things. I've had this happen over and over again. They share things they've never spoke before in their life because they needed to get it off their chest. And it also gives other people permission to really be vulnerable and share, right? So when they come to the event, they know it's live, it's in front of a big group, and everything's being recorded. So we're able to repeat and continue to share that. But on this call, I'd love for you to open up a little bit and share if you have something. If you don't, it's okay. But understand that it is being recorded before we get into continued conversation. I have a ton. I have a ton. I could talk for hours in this stuff because I love people. I love to help people. I love to share what I have. And as you guys, some of you guys know, I have my platform. It's called TAG, right? Transparency, Acceptance, and Growth. Miriam, you can jump in just 1 second. It's open. But transparency, acceptance, and growth. And the G, the growth is for everybody. Every time I share experiences that I've had, it helps me grow just as much as it helps the audience grow. So we're being transparent. We've accepted who we are, the things we've done, the challenges, the good, the bad, and the ugly that we've survived, and we're helping each other grow here. So I'm going to open it up. Miriam, if you can open your camera, that would be wonderful. If not, feel free. What do you have for today?
Okay, I'll open my cam in a minute. I gotta go and do something. But listen, I'm listening to this because it's extremely important to me. I'm a decarceration expert and prison traumatologist.
Hmm.
And what I have found in relationships is that sometimes people that have been to prison don't really tell their partners
Hmm.
because of the rejection that some of them may feel will come as a result.
Hmm.
And so right now I'm working on a situation where I counsel couples that have one has been to prison, the other has not.
Hmm.
One of the things that people don't understand is that when people go to prison, they're suffering from prison trauma.
Hmm.
And there's not a lot of specialists that's trained in prison trauma. So, how would you suggest opening that platform up for people that would be uncomfortable in talking about their prison trauma? Now, for me, I made a living off of talking about my trauma.
Hmm.
Okay, that's everybody, that's just what I do. I mean, I did 12 and a half in, 12 and a half out for a total of 25.
Hmm.
But I mean, I've made movies and on, but now I'm developing these things with couples, and I'm finding that a lot of women, especially, don't like to tell their husbands that they've been to prison. And I'm not sure how they really get past that.
Wow, that's interesting. I have feedback that I can give. Does anybody else want to jump in on that? I don't want to be the only one talking. But if anybody wants to jump in, go for it. If not, I'll tell you what I think. All right. So I'm similar to you, Miriam. I don't know when you did you jump in when I was talking about that I was incarcerated before that?
No, I did
Okay.
not.
Okay.
I didn't hear that.
Okay, so just coincident and interesting that you bring up being incarcerated and how it affects us because I was talking about that earlier. In short, I'll repeat, childhood trauma at the age of 7, started doing drugs at 9, had my first child at 13, and then got incarcerated at 14. Spent the majority of the 10 years incarcerated, got out of San Quentin prison when I was 24. And then I went into this journey of things that I'm learning, teaching, and growing right now. So I do remember when I first got out of prison, um, I call it I overcorrected, and I didn't realize it for many years. But the prison lifestyle, you know it. Sounds like you know it very well. Also, in the prison lifestyle, you have a poker face. You fear nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't let anybody disrespect you. There's a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
into what I call it a subculture now. It's a subculture that people get lost into and get stuck into,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a whole lot around that. So when I first got out of prison, I didn't tell anybody that I was in prison either. And the reason
Why?
that here's why. The reason I didn't tell anybody is because when I was younger, in that lifestyle, I would
Mm-hmm.
brag about it, right? Because that's part of the subculture. The more time
Mm-hmm.
you get, the cooler you are, right?
Right.
And sadly for men, for guys, girls like the bad boys. So the more time you
Mm-hmm.
got, the more girls like you. I mean, there's this whole just talk about a paradigm. I'll talk about paradigms before you jumped in. Talk about being in a negative paradigm, right? There's a whole lot that goes with it, and then that entices kids to brag and want more time versus study and want to go to college. They're bragging and trying to get to prison. It's a sad thing. But I didn't talk about my prison time because I used to brag about it and I didn't want to brag about those things anymore. I was becoming a new person. So I didn't talk about it at all, right? And it wasn't, I don't think that I was hiding it. I just didn't talk about it for that reason. But then what I did is I overcorrected. What I mean by that is I tried to get away from you better respect me or else, and talking and acting a certain way. I tried to really shift from being the person that I was, which in a sense helped me a lot. You have to practice being a new person. If you've been this way for a certain amount of time and you want to change, it's going to take you time to practice to be the new person. So I was practicing being this new person, but I overcorrected because I would allow people to disrespect me more than they should. Even as somebody who's never been incarcerated, you should not allow people to be disrespectful to you. It doesn't mean you're going to beat them up, right? Or get all crazy on them, but we got to stand up for ourselves. Hey, that's not okay, right? We got to be able to stand up and protect ourselves. But I overcorrected, and in anything, like I would avoid any type of conflict, and just a lot of things that, any type of rejection, all these types of things, I avoided them. So that did affect me in my relationships, in my business, in my jobs, and all these things that I had because had overcorrected. When I realized I overcorrected, I came back to it and I was able to talk and share my message. It sounds like you do now, but not as a tough guy, not as bragging, not as a victim, none of that. I was able to share it in power and in victory as here's what I've experienced and here's what I've been through and here's what I did to change it. And I was able to change it and here's what I do now and I can help you change it also. So these couples that you're talking about, I don't know where they're at in their journey. I don't know where they're at in their healing process. I don't know where they're at in their being self-aware. But if they've done the work, then there should be no reason why they can't share that they were incarcerated. Um, this girl that I was dating that I just told you about, she was a sheriff for 15 years, right? And I was incarcerated for 10. So it's interesting. We used to do a presentation about it, that we were like complete opposites, right? And she would say she got injured and she was forced to retire from her position. That's why she retired. She got injured. She got into a fight with an inmate or something, and she got injured. And so she says before she was retired, when she retired, it was a big deal for her, right? Because she didn't want to. It was forced. But she went through this whole spiritual experience herself, right? And like I was talking about earlier, unfortunately, when the hard things happen, when the pains happen, is when we grow and we learn. And we always figure out, right? Life happens for us, not to us. And she was able to look back at her life and go, there were 3 times that she felt or something happened during that career that she should have left that career. But she didn't. No, this is my career. I fought hard for this. I'm going to stay here. And she almost got forced out, but she stayed. She almost got forced out, then she stayed, and then she got injured where she had to leave, right? So she was able to look back at these things and understand spiritually and mentally and all of these things why all of this happened for her, right? And then she said she would have never have spoken to me just because of my background, even though it was 30 years ago. She would have never spoken to me because that's the person that I was. But now that she's come through it, we were able to match up and grow and learn. So if you have couples that are right out of prison and they haven't done any healing work, in my opinion, the harsh truth is they probably shouldn't even be in a relationship. And they need to understand that they need to heal and that they need to grow before they should jump into a relationship and try and live and be a partner with somebody else, right? You got to do the work. You have to do the work. Now, if these couple, I think you said you were starting a couples group for these previously incarcerated. That's outstanding because that's doing the work, right? That's doing the work and going to a group somewhere and getting counseling. Like this person's been incarcerated, I haven't, or she was incarcerated, I was, whatever it is. I don't think that we should hide it because honestly, you had mentioned we might feel rejected. If we tell them, they might reject us and that. That's work that needs to be done also. If you tell somebody that you were incarcerated and they don't want to be with you, man or woman, that's okay. That's their choice, right? That's okay. Well, first of all, they're going to ask what you were incarcerated for, and depending on the crime or whatever it is, they may make the decision off of that, right? But if you hide it and you're in a 6 month, 1 year, 2 year relationship, and then all of a sudden it comes up and whatever you got incarcerated for is a complete opposite value of what this person has, you've just hurt that person and you've wasted that person's time for maybe for those years because they just may not be able to handle it. So the most important thing is for these people, man and woman, to heal, to grow, to understand they need to be honest. Because think about this, you're going into a relationship and you haven't told them that you're incarcerated, you're not being honest. You're not being upfront. How is that going to be a good relationship? Right? So it's easier for me now because I have a million videos and everything else all over the place, the pictures of me in prison and all kinds of stuff out there because that's my story. I share my story. That's my whole platform, transparency, acceptance, and growth, Tag Talks. I bring people out to share their stories. A lot of them have been incarcerated. A lot of people have been molested. A lot of people have tried to kill themselves. There's all of these things that we experience that until we get them off of our chest and we share them, that we don't feel better about them, honestly. But then we see that we're helping other people and we all grow. So, in my
You say
opinion,
tag,
uh,
tag,
Tag Talk Club,
transparency, acceptance, and growth.
correct? Yeah, tag. Um, so, in answer to your question, I always add a little bit of stories and things to it to help understand. But in answer to your question, people need to be honest and upfront because if there's somebody that doesn't want to be with them and they're worried about the rejection, that's very selfish. It's very selfish, and they need to be honest and upfront. And maybe they need to go do the work. And it sounds like you're doing it. So congrats, and I thank you for that because they people need what you're putting together. And I'd love to help if you need help with that.
Okay. I appreciate what you said so much. One of the things I want to add is that when people, I don't know who else here has been to prison or not, but I'm a prison traumatologist. That's all I do for a living. I don't do anything else but prison traumatology and decarceration, which means helping to reverse the impact of incarceration as a result of prison trauma. The word prison trauma does not exist. Prison traumatologist does not exist. But prison trauma, it does exist in those that have suffered from it.
Mhm.
But what I've done is I wrote a program because when people that have gone to prison, when they see people like yourself, like myself, okay, you're saying what you're saying, but when I look at somebody like Robert, for example, or Rebecca, I'm like, these are very successful people. Caesar, they look like they're very successful people. How do I get to be there? How can how I can't see myself because remember, in prison, we are dehumanized, demoralized, desensitized, desocialized, and then demonized upon release. So the confidence level is nowhere near where it should be for me to be able to communicate and relate to what it is you're saying. So
Mhm.
the decarceration program is a step back. Let's work on the individual because you was in prison, you went through reentry. Reentry was just that revolving door. There
Mhm.
was nothing in that reentry that taught you about you,
Mhm.
who you were.
Mhm.
And I teach there's three people for us. There's the before you went to prison, the in prison, and the after you get released. Well, the decarcerated person have these three people to control
Mhm.
and to manage and to discipline and to love. But if we don't have this ingredient, how are we going to get these people to see themselves when all of these people are the same?
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know if that makes sense to
It,
nobody but just myself, but
it
I
it
want
does.
to know how Rebecca, gets up in the morning and looks so gorgeous when I've just been, today is Sunday. I didn't really think this was a live thing. I'm working in my office at home. And I was like, this woman's got on lipstick and everything, and she just looked like she just woke up this way. I'm like, you know what? I am in a point in my life where I'm not making excuses for me. Y'all want to see my picture? Here I go.
Yeah.
Okay, here I
Awesome.
go. We ain't going through no extra. And that's me loving me unconditionally.
Hmm.
But I've had to transition. And these are the kind of techniques that I teach.
Hmm.
Like I'm fascinated. I didn't know you had been to prison.
Hmm.
I didn't know your history. This thing just popped up on my because I'm working here and it just popped up. I said, well, let me just go over here and see what Raul is talking about and see if it's something I'm interested in. If it's not, I know how to get out.
Yeah.
But it's not very many platforms that teaches us about prison trauma. And
Hmm.
anybody that's never been to prison need to understand that prison literally is creating predators in society.
Hmm.
And there's certain questions that all of us professionals need to understand because disenfranchised people, not all of them have been to prison, but some of us are just disenfranchised. But
Hmm.
if you've never been in a state of incarceration or institutionalization, you're not going to understand how to communicate with me. If you don't know how to communicate with me, then we set ourselves up for a lot of discrepancies and it just doesn't really work. So my thing is now, let's focus on being human because with our government the way it is today, we can't rely on that anymore. We really can't.
Hmm.
We're going to have to develop some systems between us as humans to help us to be able to transition to keep all of us safe. Of course, I could get here and tell you all the wonderful things about me on and on and on, but I just say Google it and you'll see. But the thing of it is that we have to develop this humanitarianism inside our society a lot more because without it, our children are at risk, our family members are at risk, we're at risk, our business is at risk. It doesn't matter what you're doing because those people that have been to prison, you're an example, a wonderful example. We are trustworthy. We are good. We are kind. We are compassionate. But we have to live in a constant state of fear all the time.
Hmm.
We live in a constant state of rejection all the time because I look at Caesar and Robert and Rebecca and I'm like, oh, I can't really tell those people the truth about me because if I do, they're gonna just reject me. Okay. So if I start talking to them and they don't communicate with me in a way that makes me feel safe, I'm just going to keep the wall up. I'm
Hmm.
not going to tell Caesar, well, Caesar, I'm really not sure how to socialize because I've not socialized with anybody for 12 and a half years outside of prison.
Hmm.
So I don't get it the same way.
How long,
And I,
how long have you been
Yeah.
out? Sorry to interrupt. How long have you been
I,
out?
I got off parole last year,
Okay.
but I've been out 9 years.
Oh, you were on parole for 9 years?
No, I was on parole for 12 and a half
Wow.
years.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't
And
mean
I
to interrupt.
did
I was just curious.
Yeah, but I did 12 and a half years in prison, but
Okay.
the majority of that time was spent in solitary confinement.
Mm-hmm.
So psychologically and emotionally, I know I was extremely damaged. The
Hmm.
first 30 days, all I did was contemplate suicide. I didn't want to live. And I'm the mother of 7 children,
Hmm.
but all of that had been stripped from me.
Hmm.
Okay. So the program that I wrote is Sister Heart's decarceration program. And this program focuses on nothing but psychological and emotional well being, not mental health, but that's it. Because I need people in my life like you guys.
Hmm.
I don't know what Robert or Caesar or Rebecca, I don't know what these people do, but I know that I need people in my life to help me navigate through my own darkness
Okay.
because I
So,
have
Miriam,
thousands of people
Miriam,
that
can I
are,
jump in?
mhm.
yeah, that's what I was just
Right.
gonna say.
Yeah.
You said a lot of incredible things, and we want to unpack some stuff for you. So, Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, Miriam, it's brilliant what you're doing, and I have a lot of friends and associates who would certainly benefit from what you're doing. But it's like we all come with our own filters of how we perceive, and I come with my own filters of how I perceive other people. You know, I've been homeless 3 times. The last time was 4 years ago.
Wow.
And I've been sober for 28 years and, contemplated suicide numerous times and have been arrested and, but yet I've owned 30 businesses and I've written 9 best-selling books. And, I mean, all of these things have happened not one after the other, but in conjunction with. And what I do in my work is I try to unpack you know, the presuppositions that we apply to other people, because we all come from our own space. There is no other person that is me and no other person that is you on this planet. And no one will ever see this world the way that I see it. And I can't expect myself to expect anyone else to see my world the way that I see it, unless I bring them into it. And you're great. You brought me into your world, and that was brilliant because that is the only way that I can learn from you by being in your world, right? But I also have to learn how to step back out of that, back into my world, right? So I can take what you've given me and use it, utilize it, help other people, right? So I won't go on and on. Raul, thank you for putting this together. Appreciate you. And we both have lots of surprise. All of us have surprises. It's like there is not one of us that, in the world of my coaching and in just my world of friends and family, there is nobody that I know that does not need support.
Hmm. Hmm.
Nobody. There's
That's
nobody
true.
in my life, no matter my brother who's a billionaire, my sister who's a millionaire, all of them, they need support at some level.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if I go around assuming that, you know, this person's got this and this person doesn't need this, then I set myself up for not having that authentic, intrinsic connection with another human being that truly allows me to be of service at the level they need to be served, not the level I want to serve them, at the level they need to be served. And Raul, Raul and I are in the Habit Finder program, and that's where I got that from. So anyhow, just want to thank you for reflecting all of that and allowing me to be part of the conversation.
Thank you,
What do you
Robert.
do, Robert? If you don't mind my asking, what what do you do the majority of your time?
Majority of my time, I am a business coach. Yep.
Thanks, Robert. Looks like Rebecca has some feedback. Go ahead, Rebecca. Let's hear what you have to say.
I want to kind of piggyback on Robert, but also incorporate some of the things Miriam's talked about. And that is the very first thing. And this hopefully will help answer some of the questions because it is so deep with where you want to go in helping the couples. I mean, there's a lot of steps to get someone to be in a healthy place mentally, physically, spiritually, especially when they've experienced trauma. And that's one of my areas of expertise is trauma and domestic violence. So, um, based on something that Robert has said and something you've said, assumptions are a big part of where our fear base lies. And so when we go to talk to someone, and this is going to piggyback off the sales concept. In the first 5 seconds that you see someone, you've already made an assumption about that person. You've assumed what culture they're part of, how they're going to speak, how they're going to present themselves, what their likes and dislikes are. We've done this in the first 5 seconds. How open are they going to be and be receptive to what I'm about to say? Are they going to judge me? And all this comes back to our own fears, and we have to identify those. That's a whole nother area of things that that I work with people when it comes to trauma and domestic violence and other things, but it's applicable to any part of what we do. The second part I want to share with you, and this is really, really important, is, and this goes back to Raul's comments early on. I'm not sure if you were here with the beginning of the conversation, in that victim mentality is a big thing. This goes back to fear, victim mentality. So we can't look at ourselves and say, well, here's where I was at before. And so someone's going to assume this about me. This goes back to fear. So if we don't want that, we cannot do that. And one of the things that I really want to convey is not everybody, I don't know what the, especially now, what the percentage rate of people who've been incarcerated is. There are so many people who've not only been incarcerated, but they're prisons in their own mind. They're a
Yes.
prisoner in their own mind.
Yes.
So there's people who've been caught. There's people who haven't been caught. There's people who are dealing with things that keep them housebound. They're mentally bound by something, and they're in a prison of some type of an obsessive compulsion or not. I mean, like, there's just a lot of different layers that go into all this. So just starting with the basics in what Robert and Raul have said is going to help someone start going back in delving inwards and what they need to get to the point where you said, I am in my present mode here. I am okay. I've already become comfortable with who I am. This is it. I'm okay. I can present however I want to present right now. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Some people are not there, or maybe they have an image that they have to uphold for certain things, and everybody's at a different place. But the two things that I think are really crucial, just based on this conversation that we had, are what Raul said and what Robert have said. And I really like what you're doing. And just as a little background, I told you, my specialty is domestic violence and victim, helping people overcome any type of trauma, victimizations, type of things like that. I also, at one point, was a pre-release coordinator in a women's prison. So I have spent time helping people move beyond that. And I can tell you these are basically the first two steps.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mr.
I'm
C.
gonna add something
Yeah.
to that. Yeah, I'm gonna add something to that, and we can definitely take this conversation in many different angles and different approaches. But I guess that the one thing that comes to mind, and I want to echo a lot of the things that have been said right now. The biggest challenge that people are going to have in any situation, especially coming out of prison, is the idea of being accepted and the idea of being able to be able to fit into the society, right? And because of that, I think that that's the main reason why many of us do not portray in or talk about our experiences and or talk about where we've been the last couple of years because we're afraid of not being accepted. We don't have that the level of confidence, right? And there's a lot of missing elements. And the biggest thing I think that we got to do, or anybody has to do for that matter, and you talk about a role, is really there has to be that the idea of being able to start working in your inner self, right? And once you can start working through that, then I think everything's going to fall into place. It comes down to really the idea of this African proverb that I really like, and it says, "When there's no enemy within, there's no enemy outside that can do us no harm." So, with that said, we gotta be able to say one. It comes down to the decision. We as people have to decide. Okay, this is my new norm. Today's a new day. Today's a new beginning, right? Where do I want to go from here, right? We have to make that decision. And if that decision is that, hey, I want to continue to live in the past, then you're gonna keep attracting some of that. Or if that decision is, hey, I want to be able to make a difference in my life, okay, well, that's the first decision. The second thing is, what do I need to do? One, we need to work on ourselves. Number two, I do believe, and Marion, you talked about this, the associations, the people you hang around with. I do believe we have to figure out how to get into this type of groups or in an environment where we're really stepping ourselves away from what we used to do or what got us in trouble to begin with, right? One of the biggest challenges that we have, even myself, I've gone through this a lot, is that um, making doing the action, that's the simple thing to do. if you really think about it. Doing something is very simple to do. The difficult part is making that decision. The difficult part is saying, "Hey, I'm gonna take the decision of making this today, and whatever that might be, and then doing it." And why that's difficult is because then we start thinking internally. If I make the decision or the commitment to myself that I'm going to go to the gym, now I have to perform, right? And so because of that, we tend to walk away from that and say, you know what, maybe I'm not gonna do that because I don't want to internally, unconsciously, I don't want to commit to that task. And so we got to be able to make the decision. And then if that decision is not working to our benefit, then we got to be able to immediately pivot to a different decision. Hence, that's where also we have a lot of challenges is that when we make a decision and because it didn't work out the way we wanted to work out, we give up and then we say, you know what, let me just walk away from this and not do anything about it, right? And so I do believe that there's a lot of that lack of being accepted, being able to work on ourselves, and then being able to identify which groups and or resources are going to help us become the new person we want to be, because we do have that option.
Mm.
Powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. So we're at an hour. Hopefully you guys can hang out a little bit. The two things I want to get into is your power. Well, first eliminating fear, and we kind of touched on that, and then getting into your power. Miriam, great conversation. Thank you. I'd love to talk to you more about that because I can talk about incarceration and the changes that I had to make and the things I've done for hours, but I don't want to go too far for too long. But I'll just say this, and I'll say this because it's for anybody, even whether you're incarcerated or not, we have life experiences, right? And we've all been through hard times. And you had mentioned like we're one person and there's these three other people, right? That doesn't just have to be for people who are incarcerated. And what I call those three other people are alter egos. And I have an experience with alter ego, right? And that's how I was discovered that I even had an alter ego. And those are the ones that are trying to protect us, right? What are people going to think? What are people going to say? Whether you've been incarcerated or whatever you've done, what are people going to think? What are people going to say? Are they going to reject me? Those are alter egos that are holding us back. So we'll get more into that. The eliminating fear. I've recognized for myself being self-aware is key here, like we're talking about, that there's so many things that I fear, right? And a lot of times we don't even think it's fear. Sometimes I'm talking to somebody, a client, or just talking to somebody in general, and I'll bring up fear, and they'll be like, "Ah, really, I don't fear anything." And I'll be like, really? Okay, you want to get on stage and speak? No, why not? Oh, I don't know. I don't want to get in front of a bunch of people. Well, that's a fear, right? It's a fear. Hey, do you want to get on a call and talk about this challenge that you're having? No, why not? Oh, because I think I might cry. It's just, I don't feel like it. Well, that's fear. Everything is a fear. And what I found for me is that when I recognize a fear, if I confront it and I go, okay, I'm not going to allow this to stop me anymore, and I even eliminate that fear, that there's another fear behind it. There's another fear behind it. And then when you eliminate that fear, there's another fear behind it. And fear is so debilitating. It stops us from doing anything, right? And we're being open here. And so I'll talk about fears that I have, even in the industry that I'm in, right? People think, based on knowing me, that everything's good and I have all my life together and I do all this cool stuff and I go all over the place and I put on these events, I do all these things and I do them and I have a great time and I help people and I serve people. But I have my own fears. And one of the things that I'm doing for 2025 is I'm putting together my own personal system to help people eliminate fear and step into their power. And what I used to do, talking about eliminating fears, what I used to do is I'd put together my events. And the core of it was people sharing their personal stories to come and help and serve others, share the wisdom that they've gained from their hard times, right? We talk about the fruit of the vine and a bunch of cool stuff. But what I would never do is offer my own product or service from the stage, right? And I made all these excuses as to why. Well, I don't want to deliver the service. I don't want to deliver the product. I don't want. But what it came down to analyzing myself is I fear selling from stage. I can get on stage and tell you my life. I can tell you how to grow. I can share business. I can help people with any aspect of life and business. I understand it. I do it for myself. And sometimes I don't realize it. And this goes back to something that you were talking about, Miriam, and we get really deep into it another time. But a lot of times we don't do things because we don't realize that we are experts at it. We just think, I used to think for many, many years, if I know that, everybody knows that. So I wouldn't even talk. I wouldn't even speak. I wouldn't even share my wisdom. I wouldn't even share my ideas because I just think, well, if I know, who am I? If I know it, everybody knows that. And that's a sense of being self-worth or being worthy, right? Or being in our power. And sometimes I would say things or I'd mention something and people would be like, oh my God, that's a great idea. I never thought about that. And I'd be like, really? You know what I mean? Like I have something that other people don't understand. And when you get to understand that, it gives you more power and it helps you step up more and be more bold. So as I started to recognize these fears that I have and that not selling or offering a product from stage is almost selfish because I have a lot to share with people based on more of my streets than my education. Right? I did go to college. Some of you know the story. I was forced to go to college when I was on parole, and I studied all the way to Stanford University. I never got a degree because I studied what I wanted to study, which was psychology, neuroscience, anything that had to do with the mind, the body, and the spirit. Right? So I studied everything that I could to understand who I was. And then when I discovered that, I combined the academics with my street knowledge. And let me tell you something. Without the street knowledge, I could not do what I do today. A lot of what I share is my experiences and overcoming these things and the wisdom that I got from them. But I'm able to just articulate and share and be confident, I think, because of the education side. But it doesn't mean you need the education side. It just works for me. Right? So stepping into your power is to understand it doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter what you've done. Even 5 minutes ago is gone. Everything this second on before is gone. The only way it exists is in your mind. That's it. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. It happened. It's gone. It's over. The good, the bad, and the ugly, right? It doesn't matter. It's gone. So if we're worried about our past, if we're worried about something we've done, if we're worried about people not liking us, if we're worried about being rejected, we're creating it in our head because anything that's happened before is gone. It does not exist. Do you know what a memory is? Where a memory comes from? A memory comes from an experience connected to an emotion. A memory comes from an experience connected to an emotion. If I asked you right now, what did you do last year? Can you tell me something that happened to you last year, good or bad? You would think about it and you'd go, I went to Disneyland. It was super fun. Or you'd go, I got in this car accident. It was horrible. Those are both things, experiences that are connected to emotion. Anything else in between that, we don't remember. Like we don't remember walking down the street. You might be able to look back and go, well, I went to the store. Well, what day did you go to the store? I don't know. Like I know I went grocery shopping. I had to have, right? We all do. But if you said you got in a car accident, I'd say when? You'd say, September 21st or whatever day it was, I got into this accident and this happened and that happened. You'd remember everything because it's connected to emotion. So the stuff that you're carrying, that we're carrying in general, in life, from our past, whatever it is, it's connected to some kind of emotion. And when we get into emotions, if we're into an emotion and we connect to that past emotion, psychologically, we're experiencing it again right now. That's why when I share my story, even though I've come through it, I understand it, I've healed from it, and all these things. When I share my story, I still get emotional because I'm connecting to the emotion that I felt when I was a little boy and the pain that I was going through. I connect to it. I don't allow it to affect me anymore. I don't blame anybody for it anymore. I don't blame my mother. I don't blame my father. I don't blame anybody for what I experienced at all. I come as a victor, right? But when I get into the conversation, the emotion triggers and I feel it. So having the emotion is one thing, but allowing it to affect us is a whole nother thing, right? So eliminating the fears, right, is understanding the past is gone. It'll never happen again. I hope you all have heard this. If you're thinking about the past and allowing it to affect you, that's depression, something that happened. Oh, poor me, right? In short, oh, poor me. A lot of people want to reject that. Oh, I'm not poor me, but this happened. They did this to me. He did this. She did this to me, but they did it to me. Okay, well, it's gone. It happened and it's gone, right? We have to grow and we have to come out of the victim mode and understand all things happen for a reason and we can learn from them. So it's depression. We're being in this depressed mode of something that used to happen that doesn't even exist anymore. If we're thinking about the future and what might go wrong, talking about rejection or, if I tell this person this, or if I tell this person that, they might. What if? That's a form of anxiety. We're worried now about what might happen. That's a horrible way to live. And I think it's Eckhart Tolle who has the book, The Power of Now, right? Right
Hmm.
now, this second. Right now, this second, where there's 5 people on an incredible call, having a great time, learning and growing from each other. This is incredible. When you hang up, I don't know what your life is. I don't know what you have going on, right? But right now, oh, there you have it. The power of now. So right now, this second, everything is wonderful. So if we're able to live in that right now, that's where we're in our joy and our happiness and in our power, and we're eliminating these fears. I have challenges that I'm gonna deal with after, I'm sure, in the next few days, next month, whatever it is. I've got a lot of stress. I've got my event coming up. There's always a lot of work and always a lot of things going on. But if I think about it, then it's bothersome and it's anxiety. So living in the now is very important. Understanding that anytime we do not say, do, take an action, step forward, it is a fear, and we got to recognize where that fear is coming from. When we recognize the fear, we can step out of it and step into our power. So getting into stepping into our power, my industry is speaking, selling from stage, bringing people in, the whole thing, right? I've seen people come on to my stage and find their power. Okay. I have great examples of it. I show videos. I think I showed it one of the videos, Rebecca, in the Dallas one, where the girl is singing behind the podium. Do you remember that? And then she comes out. I can't show it here. It's a little bit of a long video, but this woman is auditioning for that show, The Greatest Something in the World. I forget what show it was. But anyways, it's an audition, and she's standing behind this podium auditioning, and she starts to sing. And she's like, and she's singing, and she's really low, and she's super nervous. And she's like, she's just trying to sing. And then as she sings, you can see her go into her power. I should have brought it up. I would have loved to show it to you guys, in fact. I'll post it. If you guys, we're all on Facebook, watch it, and I'll post it later today. But she's very nervous, and she's starting to sing. And then she starts to take her breath, and you can see her getting into her power. And as she gets into her power, she comes out behind the podium, and she's just singing, and this is me. That's the song. And this is me. And she's just going, going, going. And everybody just starts cheering. Like, her energy fills the room, and everybody's cheering for her. And oh my God. And then the energy reaches us through a video. It does. It's like, oh my God, it's so empowering. So she finds her power. And the key for us in life, in whatever you're doing, is to find your power. And I was talking about how people get onto my stage sometimes and they're very fearful, right? That they're going to share something they've never shared before, or they're going to offer a service or a product or something, and they're very timid in it. And I'm able to recognize it because I find myself, I was telling you, that's one of my fears, is actually selling something, right? But it's selfish to not, if you know you have something that's going to change people's lives. It's selfish to not make an offer if you know you have something that's going to change people's lives. But I see these people, and they're in this certain mode. And this one particular, she was in a bind, and she had this great service and product. She didn't know how to sell it, so I helped her get it and put together on the stage. And she started to share her message and teach and train the whole thing, and it was coming to an end. And I saw, like, I don't know if she's ready to do this pitch, right? To do this pitch. And then she looked at me, and she like, I have to do this. Like, I have to do this, right? It was a must. It wasn't I'm gonna try. It was like a must. And she just turned on. And it's really interesting to me how when you turn on your power, everybody can see it. She turned on this power, and she was just like, and you need this help. I can tell you're going to need this. And I'm paraphrasing. She was saying, more than that. But you and you and you, and this is something you need. I can tell. And the questions that it asked, and and you need this service, and you need this product. And she went. And it was just, I was just like, wow, that's the power. And honestly, when I see people step in their power like that, I tear up. Because we all have it, and it's bottled up inside. It's bottled up inside, and fear stops us from being who we are, who God made us to be. The light, the power, the energy that we have. Fear stops us from it too many times because we're worried about what people are going to think. We're worried if they want what we have. We're worried. We're fearful. Eliminate their fear and step out and watch what happens. When you step up and you just, I don't care. I know I can help you, or I know this can help, whatever it is, just sharing your story, whatever it is. When you step into that and you allow yourself to just be the power, the light, the joy that you are. I always tell people, remember who you were before society told you to be. When you could be that 5-year-old, that 6-year-old kid that you were, happy, and you didn't care what anybody thought, and I'm going to be this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to be this. Remember that. Remember that feeling, that energy. When we're kids, it's natural for us. But then we get beat up as we grow up, and things happen to us, and we get beat up, and society breaks us down. Then all of a sudden we have all these fears of what people may think. Who cares, right? If you're in a room of 20 people and 5 of those people love you because your energy is so powerful, they're going to buy your product or your service. If 10 of them don't like you, so what? Right? Rejection is a big thing for a lot of people. So what? Right? If you're talking to 20 people and 10 don't like you, it's okay. And there's statistics on that. And talking about the speaking world, is 10% of the people, as soon as you start to speak, don't like you. That's just how it is. 10% of the people don't like you. I think it's 20% of the people want what you have, and the other percentage of people are just like, hey, that was cool. Right? So no matter where you go or what you do, no, somebody's not gonna like you. But it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. Miriam, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with them. Understand that. When you are full of light and joy, and you walk into a room of darkness, people are going to see you. They're going to recognize something about this person is different than what I'm used to. And if they're in the darkness, they're going to walk away or they're going to reject you because you're so bright, right? And it's the opposite. If you're that person of light and joy and you walk into a room of darkness, you're going to feel it and you're going to go, "Ooh, I don't think I want to be here." There's something about that room. You're going to go, this is not my place. This is not my space, you know? And we have to stay out of that because for whatever sad reason, all right, Robert, man, thanks for being here. I hope to see you soon, my friend.
Thank you so much, all. All right.
All right, buddy. I'm going to finish up right now because I know we're over an hour. But if you walk into that room of darkness and you are the light, and you recognize it, you got to stay away from it. And I think Caesar mentioned this earlier. Our circle is very important. Who we hang around is who we are, right? Everything about us, who we hang around is who we are. So sometimes, honestly, Miriam, I know you like working with the incarcerated, and that's an incredible thing, but don't allow that to still be who you are because you're
Oh
around
no.
that environment all the time, right? You see a lot of cops and you see a lot of people who are like that work in the jails that they become criminals because they're around, and I mean this respectfully, they're around
Yes.
criminals. They're around criminals every single day, all day, and they become friends, and that's who they're hanging around. So if you walk into a room and people are rejecting you, or if you walk into a room and you feel like you don't want to be there, pay attention to why. Because if you're bringing in the darkness, that's one thing. If you're bringing in the light, that's another. So we have to be self-aware and we have to recognize it. And when we're able to see from victim to victor, when we're able to eliminate these fears, when we're able to understand our surrounding circle and how it's affecting us, then we're in our power and we're able to eliminate the rejection fears and not care what anybody thinks. Your life will change forever. Your life will change. And I say these things to you and I say them to me because no matter where we're at in our life, it doesn't matter when you get on a call like this and you look like everybody looks like they have the perfect life. What about me? That's a you thing. It really is. Nobody has a perfect life, right? Here's something else. Rebecca, you've probably heard me say this at the event. I said, everybody has had challenges and everybody has come through them because you're here today. And then I always ask, is there anybody who here has had the perfect life? And nobody usually raises their hand, but I say, if you have had the perfect life, stand up because we're all going to beat you up right now, right? And it's just kind of a joke that I say because there's nobody, if you say who's had a perfect life, that's going to raise their hand. Nobody. I don't care if you were born rich. I don't care if you were born poor. I don't care if you've had everything you ever wanted, middle class family, parents, mom and dad, no mom and dad, whatever it is. Everybody has had some form of a challenge in their life, and we've all come through it. And we're all here today. And I know everybody in this room right now wants to help and serve other people. So step into your power, be the light. Rejection means nothing. It's their problem. If somebody's rejecting you, it's something to have to do with them. Have you ever heard this as I close? And I'll let you guys all give your final thoughts. As I close, have you ever heard what you see in others exists in you? What you see in others exists in you. What does that mean? That means the good and the bad. When you see it in somebody, you got to look at yourself, right? You have to look at yourself because if there's something about somebody that's irritating you and you really pay attention to it, that's part of your trait. You do the same thing. You're recognizing you. When there's something about somebody that you love and you like, oh my God, this person's so amazing. I don't know what it is. I love you. It's something about you. It's something about you. It's one of your traits. So what we see in others does exist in us, right? And the last example I'll give you before I pass it on to whoever wants to talk next, is the story of Moses up on the hill, in the burning bush, and he's talking to God, and he's asking God, and I'm paraphrasing, he's asking God, "Are you this?" And he says, "Yes, I am that." "Are you this?" "I am that." "This?" "I am that." Right? All things. We all have pieces of everybody. We're all one, and we've all experienced everything, good, bad, ugly, hard, crying, happy. We've all experienced all of it. So when I see somebody, this is how I learn to stop judging. or get way better from judging. Because I used to judge people. And who am I to judge? I was incarcerated for 10 years, right? Who am I to judge anybody? But when I would see somebody walking down the street or in a store and they're acting up or whatever, and I would start to judge them, I would look at them and I'd go, I am that. And I actually learned that from Neil Donald Walsh. There's a book, Neil Donald Walsh called Conversations with God. Conversations with God. And he says that story and he talks about it. And just look at that person, whatever's irritating you about this person, go, I am that. And you'll really figure out what part of that is in you. That's how we heal. That's how we grow. That's how we step into our power. All right. Who's next? Somebody, let's everybody do a little finish up here. I'd love to hear your feedback, your comments, and your wisdom. Come on, eliminate the fear.
I would just say something, and I like what you put together, and it kind of goes back to what you mentioned, and the last 5 minutes are gone, and I have a saying that I say a lot in English and Spanish, and say tick tock, tick tock. And that's not the application that I'm referring to. That is the time and the minutes that are going on, in your clock. And the message I have is that if you're here today, you're here in this group, you're watching this, you're listening to us, having this conversation, that means that God or whatever higher being you believe in has a bigger plan for you. And you have to be able to foster that and be able to say, you know what, I'm here for a reason. And the fact that I still wake up, it's a blessing in itself. And so just keep that in mind. Like a lot of people tend to forget that. And we tend to forget that the time is of an essence and is probably the biggest commodity that we have. Yet, oftentimes we're like, oh yeah, I have plenty of time for that. I'll do it tomorrow, right? We're always thinking of that. And especially when you're growing up, and as you mentioned, most of us here are over 40, yet when you're growing up, you're like, yeah, I have plenty of time for that. And that is not the case. Time goes by so fast, and we got to be able to really appreciate that and really decide to make that change today, to think about what is it that I want to do from this point forward. What happened in the past, it was a lesson. It was not a life sentence. It is something that we have to extract those lessons and be able to utilize them to be able to say, okay, what can I do now so that I can affect my today to have a better tomorrow? Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Caesar. Who else wants to give their final thoughts here? Miriam, Rebecca?
Well, my final thoughts, I kind of wrote them. This has just been the most amazing thing for me. And I appreciate you saying so much about the light, because that's what I actually teach. And the reason that I have the power of now is because that's the book that I teach from when I go inside the prison, to get them to focus on right now, not 10 years from now, 10 years ago, right now. And so that's very powerful for me. So to take my own advice right now, I'm like on cloud nine. I'm just so excited. I'm just really, really excited because I'm not sure what I've gotten into here, but I've landed in a really wonderful place.
Yeah.
And this is what I needed, because my heart was so heavy this morning. It was heavy, and I wasn't feeling, I just wasn't where I know I needed to be. And I was hurting inside, literally hurting. But you guys have come through on the wings of the divinity, and I'm humbled, I'm grateful, and let me just say thank you.
Amen. I knew, I'm sure we've all learned something from everybody who's talked here today, but I knew there was somebody who needed this. And the reason that it is because this came on my heart just yesterday. Like I just set up this call yesterday. I was like, I need to do this call. And here's what happened from yesterday, even to this morning. I am an expert in marketing, email marketing, putting everything that has to do with marketing and emails and all that. I'm an expert at it. And I was having such a hard time getting these emails out. They were disappearing. I sent to the wrong thing. The messaging wasn't working. I had so many problems with these emails. I almost stopped. I was like, screw it, right? And I was like, no, that means somebody needs this. Somebody needs this, and it's going to change their life. We're going to make a right connection. Somebody needs this. So I was so frustrated just sitting here like, okay, I don't get it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to make sure it happens. And I probably tried sending these emails out 20 times, but they got out there, and here you are today. So I knew somebody needed to hear this stuff. Rebecca.
Yes, I'm so glad that you did, because my final thought here, this is not the reason why. I'm glad you did for lots of reasons. I think that there's so many things that people are going to get from this, not only from us just talking now, but when you share this out on other platforms and so on and so forth. But the final thought that I want to leave everyone with this, and if they can just, even if this is the bare bones basics that you take with you for the rest of your life, is there is no failure so long as you start again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if somebody has a relapse at something, okay, unless you don't pick up and start again on your, you know, journey of recovery. So once you start again, there's no failure.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Okay. So that's what I want to leave everyone with.
I love it. You only fail. You can only fail if you stop, right?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the never give up, this is just a little bit deeper in that thought process
Mhm.
so that it inspires someone to pick up and start again.
The heck is that? I got emergency alert on my phone. Jeez. I didn't even know I get those. How do you shut them off? Sorry about that. All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I'm gonna do my best to do these calls, every couple of weeks or so. Um, uh, uh, Miriam, did you get an email from me? How did you get on this call?
Yeah, I did. It just mysteriously just popped up. And then it didn't just come one time. It seemed like it just kept coming.
Oh
And
yeah, I
so,
do that.
oh, but I didn't know. And I was like, okay, God, so what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Uh, so I just clicked in
Okay, good.
and I see why.
Do me a favor, respond to the email. It'll come directly to me. I want to talk to you more about the prison stuff that we were talking about. There's a few things that I think I can help you with and with your groups, and just to give you the information that you can pass on. And then I know Rebecca and Caesar, we are connected social media, emails, I think, and everything else. So thanks again for everybody being here. I hope you guys see you soon. Our next event is January 30th and 31st in Carlsbad, California. Mr. Caesar's going to be there. I have deep conversations like this and trainings like this at our events, and then I bring up other people to come and share their stories, and just we have a great impactful time. So anybody's interested, let me know. Other than that, many blessings. Have a wonderful Sunday, and I hope to see you guys again soon.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.